So let's now output the filtered events we identified. For this, of course, we can again use our event list component, which we created at the beginning of this module. So I'll import event list from going up, components, events, event list. And then here I'll output event list like this and set my items equal to the filtered events array which we're producing here. Now if we save this and I do enter a valid combination like /events/2021/5, I'm looking for events from May 2021, and you see I do render 2 events here because indeed I do have 2 events which date is in May 2021. So these are being displayed here then. So that's working as it should, and therefore now let's just finish this app up, polish it a little bit, add a couple of extra styles and components, and then wrap up this module. So to polish this all a little bit, I'll start by adding a new component which I prepared for you. Attached you find a results title zip file which contains a results title component and its styles, and you should drag the JavaScript and the CSS file, which is part of that attached zip file, into your events folder. So that in there you then have the results title JS file and the results title module CSS file. And that's a very simple component which I just want to render on top of the event list here in the slug component. So here I'll then output the results title and replace that div with a fragment, and make sure that we import both results title as well as fragment in this component now. Fragment from React and results title from this file we just added. Now results title, this component, actually wants a date property, a date prop, which it then outputs in a human readable way, and therefore we should make sure that we provide this date prop. And to pass that to results title, down here I'll create a date constant where I instantiate a new date object to which I pass my num year and num month. That is a way of creating a date based on a year and month. The only important thing here is that you need to deduct 1 from the month because that is a 0-based index here for the month. The date constructor function expects the month to begin at 0, not at 1, which is why I deduct 1 here. And then we can set the date prop on results title and pass in our date object. And with that, we just have this little extra detail on top of that, and we can now go back to all events again. Now I also want to polish messages like this one here, when we didn't find any events, or when we have an invalid filter, like for ABC. I want to present this in a nicer way and also provide a button to go back to the all events page then. And therefore for this in this slug page component, let's work on this error message here when we don't find any matching events. I'll wrap this paragraph in a fragment. So we need to import fragment from React, but we already did so before, so that should already be there. And we put the paragraph in there so that below the paragraph, we can also output a button. So we need to import button from our own component file. And with the button added here on the button, I'll say show all events, and that should be a link. So I'll set the link prop to /events. Now that button should actually be centered, so I'll wrap it in a div with that global center class I showed you in one of the last lectures. And I'll do the same thing for this invalid filter error. I'll wrap this in a fragment as well and add my button here as well as this paragraph, move that all into the fragment so that here we also got a way of going back. Now we have the button, but the message still looks ugly, and for that I prepared another component for you, which you also find attached. It's a component you should move into your UI folder, the error alert component, which is attached. This error alert component gives us a nice container for error messages like this. And therefore, in the Slug component, we should import error alert from, and then dive into the UI folder in the components folder and into the error alert file, and then simply wrap the paragraph here for the invalid filter, for example, with error alert with this component. Simply wrap it around this paragraph, and if you do so, this now looks nicer. Now, for the case that we don't find any events, I also want to use that component. So therefore, for this error message down here, for the no events found message, we can also wrap this into an error alert like that. I also want to use that error alert in the event ID page here, because here we also have the case that we didn't find an event for a chosen event ID. And therefore here, just as before, I'll import error alert from going up, components, UI, error alert, and then wrap this paragraph with it. So error alert wrapped around this paragraph, so that if we do look for an event which doesn't exist, for example, /events/test, so just one dynamic segment after events, but a segment value which doesn't match any event ID, I get no event found. And with that, we should be good. Now we wired up all those different values and pages, and they're now all working the way they should work. We can filter, we can show all events, we can dive into a single event, and we made that work with standard React and Next.js.